humans are a curious enigma. So much so that it's perhaps no exaggeration to declare us the planet's most profound and perplexing anomaly among all living creatures. Case anywhere across our world, and this profound truth emerges. Considering the vastness of time and the mysteries it holds, it is hardly surprising that countless paleontological and archaeological finds have surfaced, many utterly horrifying or profoundly bizarre. However, even within these strange findings, a hierarchy exists where only certain rare discoveries are so impactful they leave their own researchers genuinely shaken, deeply bewildered, or truly awestruck. Yet among these, one discovery stood apart: a mass grave in the Acropolis holding the remains of over 200 individuals from 1,500 years ago that left scientists simultaneously shaken, bewildered, and awestruck, its secrets etched into the bones of the past. But the sheer number of bodies was only the beginning. What lay in the bones would reveal something far more unsettling. Instead, a single individual commanded their gaze: TUS 380. This middle-aged man, likely 40 to 50 when he died, presented an astonishing, almost unheard-of injury, a mid-forearm amputation. It was a trauma rarely, if ever, documented in such ancient remains. Faced with his era's realities, this procedure, if voluntary, meant zero anesthesia, a crude bone saw, no antibiotics, and absolutely no painkillers. This is a powerful first sign that this individual was truly, unbelievably metal. But get this, he was literally metal too. Where his missing limb should have been, a full iron knife was firmly attached, pointing outward. That's right, we're talking ancient cyborgs, long before Grand Theft Auto 6 was even a glimmer. And this knife wasn't just for display. It was a wild observation that he'd lived with this brutal upgrade for years, the metal showing signs it had endured incredible forces, truly becoming part of him. He put that integrated blade to constant, brutal use. A grim, visceral testament. Much of his teeth were ground down to nubs, concrete evidence he constantly clenched his jaw to refasten and tighten his knife straps as they loosened or came undone. And if that wasn't enough proof of his hardcore nature, consider the agonizing reality he endured this tooth-grinding torment, apparently, while also suffering through constant bacterial infections and festering dental abscesses. And if the dental horror wasn't enough, his shoulder offered more grim insights. Bones shifted, twisted by the constant, unnatural angle of a hand locked around a blade. And finally, as if the other clues weren't enough, the stump itself bore witness intense friction from the grinding motion of his makeshift metallic arm. But then, what was the knife really doing? And this answer, surprisingly, was rooted deep in his very identity as one of the fierce Germanic Lombards. Even by ancient standards, these weren't just any warriors. The Lombards were legendary for their ferocity and skill in combat. This reputation suggests TUS 3080 likely wielded his knife arm for self-defense, or in battle, perhaps even losing it during one such brutal encounter. This was no ordinary human, capable of enduring unimaginable agony. Yet, even after unimaginable agony, he might have somehow defied all odds, snatching victory. But no, historical consensus suggests he died a remarkably natural death around 50, an astounding age for that brutal era. This quiet exit stands in stark contrast to another far older discovery, whose brutal tale would unfold from a single haunting shin bone. From Kenya's Turkana, this ancient shin bone, dating back 1.45 million years, began to unveil its brutal secrets. This wasn't quite the human species we had pictured. Still, scientists instantly knew this was undeniably from an ancient, forgotten branch of our lineage. But exactly which species remains a mystery, as several ancient human groups simultaneously roamed that very same territory. Complicating matters, this bone is incredibly damaged, barely more than fragments. The real shocker: this damage was likely inflicted by other hominins. This wasn't some random injury. The trauma was chillingly precise, with 9 distinct incisions etched across the shin bone, right where the victim's flesh and muscle once clung. The chilling truth emerged: these were the oldest known cuts, definitive proof of a human body, butchered and defleshed. Unmistakably, horribly, cannibalism. And that's not even the darkest part. Just as the bone's owner remains unknown, so too does the hunter who stalked, killed, and devoured its previous inhabitant. Different life forms, intertwined. Often, a violent entanglement. It points to a dark truth. Perhaps dining on your hominin cousins wasn't always taboo in those brutal, primal times. And it perfectly fits this region, where local water sources often vanished and reappeared with brutal intensity. Unpredictable droughts, therefore, could savagely cut crucial food supplies. And though other discoveries have certainly vied for the grim title of oldest human cannibalism, this particular shin bone's unique clarity, for now, makes it the undeniable, chilling, and definitive proof. Heisen, undeniably chilling proof. But even with lingering questions, this puzzle is hardly a head-scratcher, nothing like the bewildering enigma of the Rising Star Cave. Its name might pique your interest, but the astonishing story waiting inside is the real marvel. Actually, even wilder. This remarkable cave, buried deep within South Africa's Malmani Dolomites, only hit modern human radar surprisingly recently. First documented in the 1980s, a pioneering team explored and roughly mapped its initial sections. Yet its true nature quickly became clear, a sprawling, deceptively complex system, teeming with unforgiving hazards that left much of it a mystery. But this labyrinth, nestled in the cradle of humankind, inevitably drew another look. An anthropological team, by a stroke of pure chance, stumbled upon a hidden chamber, later dubbed the Dinledi Chamber. Inside, a startling discovery: human bones. Hinkle. Instead, an endless, unsettling sea of them. Over 1,500 pieces. A jumbled puzzle of 15 people, encompassing every stage of life, from fragile infants to their ancient elders. That vast age range immediately crowned it Africa's most revealing early human fossil find. Already, a groundbreaking discovery. But the real mystery: these bones simply shouldn't have existed here. Accessing that chamber was no walk in the park. Imagine navigating dozens of meters of unlit passages, then squirming through a relentlessly tight squeeze, a gap so narrow only the very thinnest could pass, and even they needed to literally strike a Superman pose just to get through. Even if you somehow navigated that impossible squeeze, the ordeal wasn't over. You'd then face a brutal, jagged climb, only to squeeze through yet another unforgiving passage. And then, a sheer 49-foot drop, a vertical nightmare to the very end. Pure hell. But if you somehow survived that, what came next? Some congrats. You finally reached the chamber's entrance. This isn't a destination reached by deliberate choice, but a twist of fate. Initially, the simple explanation pointed to floods, a relentless force, dragging the deceased deep into the cave's furthest reaches. But detailed sediment studies flipped that theory on its head. The site was never flooded, and these remains arrived not in a single catastrophic event, but carefully placed over generations. This new understanding ignited a truly unsettling thought. Perhaps a relentless man-eater was responsible, repeatedly dragging human remains into the cave's depths. History, after all, offered dark precedents of such predatory behavior. But the team quickly dismissed this chilling theory among countless human bones. Only one belonged to something else, entirely an owl. Since no predator targets humans so precisely, and with no signs of attack on the bones, scientists quickly crossed this unlikely idea off the board. Even more curious, these ancient remains weren't just free of attack marks. They arrived virtually unscathed, with almost no damage. What truly perplexed experts was the implication these bodies weren't dropped down a massive vertical chute, but carefully, deliberately, placed inside. But this begs the terrifying follow-up: who or what had the twisted motive and incredible capability to meticulously stack bodies in such a remote, brutal section of the cave? A place so challenging it demands modern equipment just to reach. And the chilling truth behind the perpetrators. It points directly to what they found: not just humans, but an entirely new, distinct species, now astonishingly dubbed Homo naledi. To this day, every fragment of Homo naledi comes only from the Rising Star Cave. Yet, this treasure trove of bones paints a vivid picture shorter and lighter than us, with noticeably smaller brains. Their bodies were uniquely built, clearly more at home in the trees than other Homo species, offering a striking glimpse into their distinct anatomy. Their story unfolded between 335,000 and 236,000 years ago, making them surprisingly recent additions to our family tree. Despite their knack for crafting tools, aided by similar brain structures, no one believes they hauled high-tech climbing or navigation gear. So how on earth did they reach that deep chamber, especially while moving bodies? It's a baffling, persistent puzzle. And the puzzle's answer, still completely unknown. Some theorize they used fires to navigate the labyrinthine caves, while others believe deliberate markings served as their ancient guideposts. Yet every attempt to explain how they did it has faced immediate criticism. And yet, even the most fundamental idea that Naledi themselves placed these bodies remains fiercely debated. Even more contentious, some claim that while the fossils are Naledi, an entirely different Homo species actually put them there. Some even suggest that we, modern humans, actually buried these Naledi fossils in the cave long after they died. If that's the case, it's an even wilder twist. But the truly bizarre part, you've made it this far without hitting subscribe, and without any professional climbing gear. Seriously, intentionally stashing a body inside a narrow cave opening. That's not just weird, it's genuinely unhinged. While opinions on that particular act might vary wildly, what's undeniably bizarre is the discovery scientists made at a remote, high-altitude lake in India's Trestle Massif. It's Rukkund, a shallow, narrow glacial lake. But for those who live nearby, it's earned far more chilling names: Mystery Lake, Skeleton Lake. Why exactly? Because this shallow pool is ringed by hundreds of silent bodies. Just bones. Over 800 individuals, possibly. This isn't your typical burial ground, though these bodies arrived without intention, just haphazardly abandoned. A grim tally of lives violently ended by this tiny lake. Discovered in the early 1940s, British authorities immediately feared a dark truth. These casualties were evidence of a covert Japanese invasion of India. But a closer look revealed these clearly human remains were ancient, far too old to be invaders. The artifacts scattered among the immediate carnage, wooden pieces, iron spearheads, leather slippers, and rings confirmed it, hinting at a much deeper, more complex mystery. Naturally, this left researchers utterly confounded what horrific event caused such a mass death. But the victims themselves held a horrifying secret. The lake's bizarre temperature and altitude had preserved many bodies, some even with intact flesh, an unvarnished, chilling hint to what transpired. Their findings revealed a horrifying truth: each victim bore the mark of a single, colossal, round impact. This catastrophic blunt force trauma, concentrated on their heads and upper bodies, bore all the hallmarks of massive, rounded impacts from above. Experts quickly speculated these could be immense stones or exceptionally dense chunks of ice. But talking to nearby villages, scientists heard whispers of an ancient legend: a mighty king, his family, and retinue, all reportedly wiped out by a colossal hailstorm attempting to cross the treacherous peak. Pairing that ancient legend with the brutal injuries found on the skeletal remains, the team definitively concluded Skeleton Lake had been pummeled by a truly massive hailstorm, resulting in swift, widespread death. Case closed, or so they thought. But dig deeper, and a curious detail emerged. Not every skeleton showed the telltale marks of that brutal hailstorm. But that was just the start. Even more unsettling evidence emerged. A later team, examining more specimens, uncovered a stunning truth. The bodies weren't from a single group at all, but at least 3 distinct populations, originating from different eras and distant regions. Of these, 2 individuals arrived around a millennium ago, perishing within decades of each other, yet their DNA pointed to strikingly different South and Southeast Asian ancestries. But the third, incredibly, emerged from a wholly unexpected region, mainland Greece and Crete. And these outliers weren't ancient at all. Their demise, incredibly, was as recent as 200 years ago, leaving many to wonder if the lake is truly safe to visit today. Knowing what killed each group would finally offer answers. But that critical information remains elusive, leaving the lake's true dangers a chilling mystery. The prevailing theory still points to a freak hailstorm claiming at least some of the victims. Yet picturing 3 separate human lethal hail events striking this exact isolated location beggars belief, especially when compounded by a baffling lack of clear injuries on the bodies. And the whole baffling narrative spirals even further when you realize these distinct groups came from just 38 analyzed individuals. Considering only 38, it's terrifying to ponder how many groups Skeleton Lake truly claimed. The dark riddle persists. But mystery doesn't always lead to the ghoulish. Perhaps the most disquieting revelations aren't born of malice, but from intentions that, in truth, were surprisingly good. Skulls plastered into walls. By the 1930s, around the Levant, particularly near Jericho, researchers were unearthing frightening objects, uncannily resembling human heads. Built from intricate layers of plaster, these uncanny objects were painted and adorned with seashells, remarkably mimicking eyes, hair, and skin. But that unsettling feeling was nothing compared to the shocking discovery within. When finally pried open, these plaster mockeries contained actual human heads, or what remained of them. These grotesque relics, more than 20 in number, stretch back 10,000 years, mostly adult males, but chillingly, some women and even children. But even stranger than the plastered faces, every jawbone was meticulously removed. Then, these defleshed skulls were carefully positioned beneath the very foundations of ancient dwellings, a truly unsettling practice, a grim foundation for their very homes. This discovery sparked intense curiosity. Why create these unsettling heads in the first place? One early dark theory suggested the makers, if you can even call them, artists, had killed the original owners, then kept their heads as gruesome trophies. The unique plastering process mirrored that chilling practice of shrunken heads, a ritual steeped in death. More recently, a surprisingly wholesome theory surfaced. The theory suggests these skulls, found buried directly under people's homes, represent some of humanity's earliest, most intimate burial practices. And strikingly, these weren't just interred and forgotten. They were actively handled, revisited, and perhaps even revered for centuries. This went on so long that the specific individuals likely became abstract ancestors, their identities blurring into a generalized past, a commitment perhaps too weighty for those who inherited them. Roughly 2 millennia later, the Jericho plastered skulls simply vanished. All that culturally survived was a lone, lingering echo of their past. That echo, a mythical tale, houses, Cadi, millennia later, found echoing from the very ground. Its immortal voice speaks. But what's the endgame? What's the payoff for eternity? Plays so tear. A skull now teeming with creeping lime, partly celebratory. More, a grim, ancient memory. Apparently, an unsettling warship was just the era's grim, desired design. But a far more disturbing design already haunted the blueprints. It's chilling reality, the human jigsaw, and the full horror is just unfolding. Unlike the Levant, Scotland delivered its own brutal blow. Off South Wice in the Outer Hebrides, a chilling discovery, 4 Bronze Age skeletons. Echoing Jericho's skull finds, these too were inside ancient homes, but with one crucial, unsettling distinction: they rested above ground. Yet they lay there, seemingly at peace, with no sign of a violent, dramatic struggle, and, largely, these discoveries seemed unremarkable. But then, a deeper dive unearthed a glaring contradiction. Instead, one presumed female, under scrutiny, held a surprising biological secret. The body itself seemed female, but the skull was unmistakably male, and the discrepancies kept coming. Then, an even crazier detail emerged. Those additional parts came from 2 separate males. This meant the skeleton wasn't one person at all, but a bewildering composite of 3 distinct individuals. It got wilder. Every single specimen was yet another chaotic blend of multiple people. Pure chaos. And then came the next shock. These pieced-together humans weren't merely assembled, but somehow, unnervingly, chemically pickled. Their bodies, their very minerals dissolved, suggested they'd been soaking in an incredibly corrosive, highly acidic bath. Just steps away, a peat bog offered the ideal, naturally acidic conditions. This quickly suggested the remains had been submerged within its corrosive depths for an extended period. Yet, the remains lay outside the bog's acidic embrace, igniting even more perplexing questions. This implied someone not only painstakingly stitched multiple bodies, but patiently bod-preserved them, then shockingly displayed their gruesome creation within a home. But the real kicker, radiocarbon dating, then confirmed these stitched-together bodies predated the house itself by hundreds of years. What's truly going on here? Turns out, researchers believe this was an extreme, evolving form of ancestral worship. For centuries, a Bronze Age community in Scotland meticulously kept their deceased relatives above ground, entwining them into a grotesque, ever-growing puzzle of human remains, passed down and added to by generations. The grim puzzle grew with every new demise. Then comes the truly unsettling thought. These weren't revered ancestors, but rather grim, chilling trophies of conquest. But the sheer, painstaking effort invested in them hints at something far more profound than mere trophies. Given the brutal realities of ancient conflict, it seems unlikely they treat fallen enemies' remains with such meticulous care. Honestly, even compared to today's worst acts, ancient violence often feels next-level deranged, especially the Neolithic. This era wasn't just about killing, it was about inventing shockingly cruel methods. Think ritualized torture, mutilation, bizarre executions. Massive sites found across Eurasia offer chilling evidence of a period obsessed with brutal, innovative ways to end a life. It makes you wonder what primal darkness drove them. So vast are these grim findings, they offer a disturbing rabbit hole into a time of unthinkable cruelty, truly deserving further investigation. Such endless findings mean even researchers are now numb to the horrors of ancient murder. Few other eras, if any, have truly matched this ancient level of brutality. But one location in the US comes horrifyingly close to that ancient brutality, offering a chilling glimpse into an entire society's devastating collapse. Our unsettling story now takes us to southwestern Colorado, where an ancient and intricate civilization known today as the basket-maker Pueblo culture once flourished. For thousands of years, they thrived here, their lives rooted in clever pit houses, homes literally dug into the ground, offering shelter and security. But within these very structures and their surroundings, a truly horrific scene was uncovered. An entire community utterly vanished, wiped from existence. Of the 24 grim remains, 7 victims utterly transfixed investigators, their bodies so obliterated they defied all human understanding. Bones were stripped, roasted, then cracked skulls, scorched and smashed, showed disturbing scoop marks where brains had been crudely extracted. Every grim detail screamed of a mass cannibalistic feast. This wasn't just a simple attack. The site was abandoned and utterly defiled, hinting that those who lived there weren't the aggressors. No, they were the victims, brutally assaulted, killed, and then horrifically consumed right inside their own defiled dwellings. Case of Eon. The gruesome remains, blood-soaked tools, and cooking pots lay scattered. These weren't just cooking pots. They likely boiled the very people who once ate supper from them. And the cannibals showed utterly no mercy, no pity for their gruesome meal. But the most disturbing discovery, copper-like human feces embedded in the cold ashes of a pit-house hearth. A horrifying final act suggesting one attacker deliberately defiled the home long after the carnage had ended. For this culture, hearths were sacred. The heart of the home defiling one like this was the deepest, most calculated insult imaginable. The sheer brutality of these findings, frankly, was almost too much to stomach. Initial reactions questioned everything, suggesting perhaps a foreign invasion, or even that the damage wasn't cannibalistic at all, but from other, less horrifying means. But any hope of an easier truth evaporated instantly when a single, devastating piece of evidence surfaced. The coprolite itself. Tests soon confirmed it, unmistakable traces of human myoglobin, and that substance doesn't simply appear in your system unless you've been, well, consuming human flesh. It's a stark, grim reality. Whoever left that grim calling card, right there in the hearth, was no casual cannibal. Unlike other biological traces found in the region, this grim discovery was pure myoglobin. For 12 hours, human was the only thing on this individual's grisly menu. Nothing but human. Nada. Pure, undiluted human. But this brutal example, while intensely raw, was truly just one chilling fragment of a far larger, more disturbing puzzle. Then, without warning, researchers stumbled upon a chilling transformation. The basket maker Pueblo culture shifted from peace to systematic, brutal human consumption. Havias, a dark pattern disturbingly familiar from other ancient societies. This culture, shockingly, exhibits some of the highest rates of suspected cannibalism and ritualistic violence of any ancient society, with studies definitively confirming dozens of these brutal acts. What's more, a grim analysis of 870 skeletons revealed over 8 bore clear signs of cannibalism, with violence rates climbing even higher. This sudden, inexplicable explosion of brutality, seemingly from nowhere, begged a compelling question: why? Despite ongoing debate, a prevailing theory now connects this brutal enigma to 2 critical coincidences. First, roughly 850 years ago, the Chaco system, the very heart of their civilization, mysteriously vanished, its vast network collapsing into silence. And just as mysteriously, savage droughts soon plagued the land, abruptly ending years of plenty. This lethal cocktail plunged the land into such desolation, society slowly imploded. Famine led to unthinkable acts. Cannibalism became a grim reality as people turned on each other, desperate to survive the unimaginable final days. A chilling, desperate reality. Yet, these remains, stories, and evidence are merely the terrifying tip of an unseen iceberg. Below, countless mysteries, brutalities, and oddities still churn, desperate to surface. If you've plunged into these depths and emerged unfazed, consider yourself tougher than the hardened fragments of those Jericho skulls. If those Jericho skulls didn't shake you, craving more reasons to question humanity's sanity, I've got a deep dive on Neolithic violence. Trust me, it only gets more disturbing. Till our next unsettling deep dive, keep watching Mystical Beast.